sharp, jerking motion with her hands. The squeaking stopped.
Go back to your quarters now, Dane. You shouldn't be here. Could be bad for your health.
The professor kicked aside the cart and headed for a second lead-lined door at the far end of the room. A door marked, Reanimation Lab. Danger. Keep out. Above these words was a picture of a snake, curled in a circle, eating its own tail. Dane rubbed away a stinging tear as he watched his aunt go. Then he narrowed his eyes and stared at the door.
No,
he said softly.
I won't.
He stepped forward and gently pushed against the sign, peering round the door's edge. In the room beyond, a large white laboratory, a mechanical nurse with a red cross on her chest was adjusting a square metal machine on a table. A phonograph on a wheeled stand in the corner played ghostly opera music from a wax cylinder.
Ready to take the dead, Miss Buckle?
Professor Milksop joined the mechanical at the table and examined the 4 glass lenses arranged on the front of the square machine. Miss Buckle frowned as she checked a tangle of copper wires that emerged from the rear of the machine. This stretched out to a control box and socket inside a lead-lined observation booth on the far side of the room.
Is that one of your jokes, Professor?
She asked.
I can never quite tell. My clockwork doesn't easily compute humor.
Forget about it.
Professor Milksop laid Spook in a tray on the table in front of the machine and adjusted a blue glinting shard of diamond inside its workings. Then, when she was satisfied all was ready, she pulled down her goggles and stepped away from the machine into the lead-lined booth. Miss Buckle followed her. Dane peeked further round the door, watching Professor Milksop through the observation booth's porthole window as she shut herself and Miss Buckle in. Then the professor pressed a series of buttons on a control box. Soon, the machine on the table hummed to life as a tidal wave of electricity buzzed through it. Miss Buckle peered out through the porthole and saw Dane sneaking into the lab.
Stop!
She shouted, half at him, half at her mistress. But it was too late. Crackling strands of blue lightning were already shooting from the 4 lenses of the machine. They waved around the lab like a tangled ball of angry, energetic snakes. Their lightning strands latched onto Spook's body, engulfing it. The little mouse writhed and jerked in rhythm, then opened its eyes, wiggled its whiskers, and crawled back onto its feet like a newborn. Soon, the lightning found Dane, winding round him like a nest of vipers, biting electrically into his skin. His body spasmed, his feet danced a random rhythm. Silver scales burned his eyes. His limbs scissored and jiggled. He fell to his knees, keeled over on the floor, and was still. The arms of lightning crackled onwards through the open door, arcing along the passageways of the base, slipping serpent-like around each crew member in turn and dancing them to the same jerky death. Soon, there was only darkness once more, and 2 last shadows, Professor Milksop and Miss Buckle, who ran from the open doorway of the observation booth and kneeled down beside Dane. Sparks flew off Miss Buckle's metal body as she shook Dane by his shoulders.
Master Milksop!
She called, her mechanical voice wavering.
Wake up!
Professor Milksop kept her distance. She didn't want to get an electric shock.
Dane?
She asked.
Are you still in there? You still alive?
Chapter 1. Lily woke on Christmas morning to find herself not at home, as she had been dreaming, but on a top bunk in the cabin of a sleeper Zepp that was crossing the Atlantic Ocean. She blinked her green eyes and rubbed her freckled face until she felt entirely awake. Then, with her fingers, she began combing out the worst of the knots in her tangled fire-red hair. Under the thrum of the airship's purring engines, she could hear the beat of her cog heart, a mechanical heart of cogs and springs that her papa had given her.